history books.
This is the world's first reusable cotton swab. It can remove up to 10 times more earwax.
Is scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central, 1:05 a.m. Eastern.
SpaceX copies on hatch closure. We'll send a command momentarily. And a final reminder that the big loop will be deactivated following Dragon's exit from the approach ellipsoid.
Copies. We get the part one confirmed, and we are good to down suits. That's in work momentarily. We'll expect to go off big loop when we get outside the field, sir.
That's a good readback, Freedom.
With all the Freedom thrusters operating in perfect fashion, the acknowledgement by the spacecraft communicator in Hawthorne to Commander Nick Hague aboard Freedom that the crew has been given the go-ahead to get out of their entry suits for the time being, get into more comfortable clothing as Dragon continues its traverse away from the International Space Station. This will continue throughout the course of the overnight hours into tomorrow afternoon, a series of pre-programmed maneuvers that will enable Freedom to be in a position for its deorbit burn on Tuesday afternoon. That deorbit burn is scheduled to take place at 4:11 p.m. Central Time, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be a 7-minute, 29-second braking maneuver to enable Dragon to slip out of orbit. Its velocity slowed by 53.2 meters per second, enabling it to begin its high-speed entry back through Earth's atmosphere and a parachute-assisted splashdown off the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of America at 4:57 p.m. Central, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time.
Station and Houston, on the big loop, Dragon has exited the keep out sphere. Station copies. Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. Dragon has exited the approach ellipsoid and is on a 24-hour safe free drift path. Configure comm for Dragon to ground in preparation for big loop deactivation. And Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. Premature call. We have exited the keep out sphere but are still in the approach ellipsoid.
SpaceX Freedom, come check on the hidden light.
Freedom, we have you loud and clear. How us?
With Dragon having crossed the keep-out sphere, next major milestone will be the exiting of the approach ellipsoid to depart the neighborhood of the station. With that, we'll toss it for the moment back to Hawthorne and Veronica and Sandra.
Thanks so much, Rob. As Rob just mentioned, we are now waiting for Dragon to exit the approach ellipsoid, also known as AE, which is another imaginary shape, this time a three-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers, in the same family as the keep-out sphere. It's one of several safety zones set up to govern visiting spacecraft, either arriving or departing the station. Before moving into the keep-out sphere or the approach ellipsoid, spacecraft have to be configured where they would not cross the imaginary boundary for a set period of time, even if the spacecraft lost all maneuvering.
That's right, and that approach ellipsoid, once we get past that milestone will be something that we call the end of integrated operations. And integrated operations means that we are talking to each other on the big loop. So we did hear those communications back and forth. The big loop is essentially not only the crew on the International Space Station, the crew in Dragon, but also both Mission Control Houston and in Hawthorne. Hence the name The Big Loop, because they're all working together to make sure that they have common communications during some of these dynamic portions of flight. So again, we are standing by for approach ellipsoid exit at 10:24 p.m. Pacific time. And on your screen there, we are getting a view of Dragon from the International Space Station, now quite a bit smaller than when we just saw a few minutes ago, undocking at 10:05 p.m. Pacific. Also in the line of sight there, we have a small view of the Canada arm, which is a robotic arm that helps do some maneuvering and is utilized a lot during spacewalks on board the International Space Station. So to recap, the hatches between the International Space Station and Dragon were closed earlier today at 8:05 p.m. Pacific, 11:05 p.m. Eastern. Since then, the crew has settled in and is working to take off their spacesuits for their 17-hour journey back to Earth. The joint NASA and SpaceX teams did, of course, poll go to proceed with undocking, and that undocking command was then sent at 10 p.m. Pacific, followed by umbilical retraction and hooks opening, with physical separation taking place at 10:05 p.m. Pacific, as the Space Station and Dragon were traveling 261 statute miles off the coast of Guam over the Pacific Ocean. Dragon then completed 2 of 4 departure burns and has exited the keep-out sphere, and we are now just minutes away from Dragon crossing the approach ellipsoid to set the spacecraft and Crew 9 up for their path back to Earth. Again, Dragon is targeting to splash down off the coast of Florida in the Gulf at 2:57 p.m. Pacific, 5:57 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday, March 18th, marking the completion of a long-duration science and research mission.
Baby, जापान चले?
जापानीज वाइफ तो यहाँ भी है ना, जब भी मन होगा यहाँ जाएंगे ना। ब्रो, बस इतनी आसानी से अपने ड्रीम वेकेशन के सपने को स्किप कर दिया। सपनों को स्किप नहीं, सिप करो।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
The founder of Bira 91, Ankur Jain.
I always say that there's no beer that's bad beer, but some beers come pretty close. Every morning we pick like 3 or 4 breweries at a brewery at 8 a.m. and
8 a.m. you started work. Okay, nice.
Doing your research by drinking a fresh pint.
You met your wife on Tinder.
Yes.
She's probably one of the luckiest to be on Tinder who are married, happily married.
Got lucky in many ways.
Do not forget to have fun.
Great views right now on your screen of Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California.
It looks like we're starting to get maybe some views there of Dragon as well. These views are being controlled by one of the flight controllers in Mission Control Houston called Cronus, and they help to make sure that the cameras are in position to view not only visiting vehicles that are arriving and departing, but also help to ensure that cameras are in position to get great Earth views, ensure that perhaps if we're flying over a natural disaster like a hurricane or a wildfire, they are ensuring that those great cameras on board the International Space Station are being put to good use to capture all of the science and research that we can aboard the microgravity laboratory. And, you know, fun fact, actually, the International Space Station will be celebrating 25 years of continuous human presence this November. So if you are younger than 25 years old, you have never known a day in your life where there was not a human being living and working aboard the International Space Station.
That is so cool to me. It's just this amazing step forward for human exploration in space.
And with that, we're going to check back in with Rob Navius at the Johnson Space Center one more time. Go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Sandra. You mentioned that continuous presence on board the International Space Station. We are approaching the point of the approach ellipsoid exit, which will mark the end of integrated operations with the International Space Station and the flight control team here in Houston. Just a reminder, on board, 7 crew members representing 3 nations: Alexei Ovchinin, the station commander, and his Roscosmos colleagues Ivan Wagner and Kirill Peskov, Anne McLean, Nicole Ayers, and Don Pettit of NASA, and Takoya Onishi of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. Ovchinin, Wagner, and Pettit are next up to depart the station on April 19th. They are scheduled to return home to the steppe of Kazakhstan and a parachute-assisted landing on April 19th U.S. time, April 20th in Kazakhstan. Before that happens, another NASA astronaut, Johnny Kim, along with 2 Roscosmos cosmonauts, will be launching from Baikonur on April 8th as that continuous presence of researchers on board the International Space Station continues unbroken. Sandra?
And thank you so much, Rob, for that update. We really appreciate you joining us here as you spent your evening in Mission Control Houston. Again, we are continuing to get these views following Dragon's undocking from the International Space Station at 10:05 p.m. Pacific time. That sets us up for a splashdown tomorrow afternoon at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time off the coast of Florida. And so we did mention that the crew was busy with a lot of science and research space really eventually leading mission
standing further nine some of the amazing science that crew nine conducted. They were on board station. In total, nine completed more than 150 experiments, conducting over 900 hours of research. Following their splashdown tomorrow, some of those time-sensitive experiments will be among the first offloaded off the capsule and then returned to various research facilities across the country so that the science can continue.
And in addition to that science, they also completed a few spacewalks, one of which was to actually swab the outside of the International Space Station for microorganisms to see if anything might potentially be able to survive the harsh environment of space, which is pretty interesting. Another one was a spacewalk to remove a radio frequency group, or the RFG. NASA astronaut Sunny Williams was able to successfully remove that, which was a big milestone for NASA.
डेंगू के rise.
And as you mentioned, over 100 and excuse me, over 530 hours specifically dedicated to NASA science between NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sunny Williams. So that just goes to show the great use that the microgravity lab has for science and research on the ground.
I still can't get over that fact that you shared that it has been almost 25 years of continuous operation on board the ISS. That's amazing.
Yes, over 270
Station
people.
On2 for PMA3 closeout photos. Go ahead, Ann. I just downlinked a card with all of the PMA3 and IDA and photos as well as crew 9 departure. Those are on SSC 17. Copy 17. And just want to clarify, also on 17, I did a whole series of kind of inspection documentation photos before departure and then a series after departure per the instructions. So 2 different folders with before and after photos. We copy.
And that was the voice of NASA astronaut Ann McClain, who is still on board the International Space Station, stepping through procedures with the ground to wrap up after undocking, taking some photography of the hatch that the team on the ground will inspect, make sure everything checks out just fine. So we are awaiting the confirmation that Crew Dragon Freedom has exited the approach ellipsoid. We're expecting that here in just a couple of seconds here, really. So we might hear that call out here shortly.
And again, if you're just joining us, the approach ellipsoid is a 3-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers in the same family as the keep out sphere. One of the key differences with the AE is that vehicles outside of it have to be on what we call a 24-hour safe free drift trajectory, which means that the spacecraft would not cross into the approach ellipsoid for at least 24 hours again, even if it lost all maneuvering.
That's exactly right. So we'll continue to stand by for that. Now, you may be wondering, what will the crew be doing during their 17-hour phasing? You did hear the call out earlier that they had to go to doff or take off their spacesuit. So they'll get settled in, have the opportunity to have a meal, and try and get some sleep before their targeted splashdown off the coast of Florida tomorrow afternoon at 2:57 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow afternoon. So we are looking forward to seeing them splash down off the coast of Florida tomorrow. So continuing to stand stand by for that approach ellipsoid exit. Should be hearing the call out any moment now, and that will really end the portion of integrated operations between the space station, Dragon, Hawthorne, Mission Control, and Mission Control Houston as well.
Freedom, SpaceX on the Big Loop. Dragon has now exited the approach ellipsoid and is on a 24-hour safe free drift path. Please make sure that comm is configured for Dragon to ground.
Come here, sexy little thing. Snap a picture, bring it on. Know you wish you were my Levi jeans. Love you down to the bone.
Protein snacking मतलब no chicken.
And SpaceX Freedom on Dragon to ground. Understand we're out the approach. Ellipsoid, 24-hour freedom.
Good confirmations there, both from Mission Control and Dragon.
And again, we did hear confirmation that Dragon Freedom has now exited the approach ellipsoid, or AE, which is that imaginary shape that's three-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers in the same family as the keep out sphere. So one of the key differences with the AE is that vehicles outside of it have to be on what we call that 24-hour safe free drift trajectory. This means that the spacecraft would not cross into the approach ellipsoid for at least 24 hours, again, even if it lost all maneuvering.
With that, Crew 9 has officially departed the International Space Station. As Sandra mentioned, it will take them about 17 hours until they make their way back to Earth. So the crew is currently settling, as Sandra mentioned, for a little bit of dinner or maybe get their suits off before they take some time to rest before returning to Earth. Dragon is, of course, targeted to splash down off the coast of Florida tomorrow at 5:57 p.m. Eastern, 2:57 p.m. Pacific on March 18th, followed by the crew getting picked up at sea by a SpaceX recovery vessel. As they rest up, our teams here will continue to keep an eye on the weather to ensure a safe return for Dragon and our Crew 9 astronauts.
And though our coverage here in Hawthorne today is wrapping up for now, we will turn it over to the NASA team in Houston to take us through the next phases of the Crew 9 mission. Our friends at the Johnson Space Center will provide continuous live audio-only coverage along Crew 9's journey home until we rejoin tomorrow. You can find the audio-only link by visiting nasa.gov/live and clicking the mission audio link, or by searching for NASA Mission Audio Live Feed on YouTube at go.nasa.gov/live-ISS.
Meanwhile, we'll rejoin you for live visual coverage starting roughly 1 hour prior to splashdown at 1:45 p.m. Pacific. As always, you can find mission updates on X at NASA, at SpaceX, and on the web at nasa.gov. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you.
Experienced a relocation maneuver with Haig, Gorbanoff, Williams, and Wilmore on board back on November 3rd to move from the forward port to the zenith port, a short spin around the block to reposition that spacecraft where it has been mated and docked to the International Space Station since last November. 3.5 minutes away from physical separation. Once the physical separation occurs between Dragon and the docking port on Harmony, it will begin to move above the station at a very slow rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second. Then we'll move behind the station. A series of departure burns will then put it on a trajectory to carry it below the station and on its way to a safe distance away from the International Space Station for its deorbit burn that will occur at 4:11 p.m. Central Time, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday afternoon to begin the final leg of the ride home for Williams, Wilmore, Hague, and Gorbanoff. Two and a half minutes to go until physical separation. All systems reported to be in great shape. The latest weather forecast off the coast of Florida at the splashdown sites indicates pristine weather for the arrival of the Crew 9 crew on Tuesday afternoon.
Open and nominal.
The first gang of hooks has opened, standing by for the second. Springs on both sides of the docking interface will push off against one another to initiate that opening rate for Dragon. Seconds till physical separation. Heading into the home stretch for Williams and Wilmore, the beginning of the end for a 9.5-month mission in space. The interface between Dragon and the International Docking Adapter no longer sealed. The International Space Station and Dragon flying from southwest to northeast across the Pacific Ocean at an altitude of 261 statute miles.
All hooks open.
All hooks are open. And undocking confirmed. Freedom is free of its moorings. Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore begin their belated trip home.
Separation confirmed.
Undocking occurring right on time at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. Good motion, good stability on Dragon as it backs away.
Freedom, SpaceX on the big loop, depart burn 0 nominal.
Good opening rate reported by the visiting vehicle officer.
Finding the perfect dress, strappy heels, and jewelry takes so much effort. For Amazon पे it's totally effortless.
इस त्योहार Amazon पर मिले wear it with suggestions on top fashion brands ताकि fashion हो effortless.
हर पल fashionable.
वाओ साक्षी, गॉर्जियस है. सबको बता दूं? तुम्हारा सीक्रेट?
तभी तो एक भी सफेद बाल नहीं.
पर बाल डैमेज हुए तो?
माही, भरोसा है मुझे गार्नियर ब्लैक नेचुरल्स पर.
और मुझे तुम पर.
मिले 15 मिनट में नेचुरल लुकिंग बाल और बादाम तेल का पोषण. करे सारे सफेद बाल गायब 5 गुना ज्यादा शाइन के साथ. वाओ माही, गॉर्जियस है.
नेचुरल लुकिंग कलर का भरोसेमंद सीक्रेट. गार्नियर ब्लैक नेचुरल्स
बाय गार्नियर, naturally.
begin. The vestibule will be depressed to vacuum, setting the stage for the initiation of the opening of the hooks holding Dragon in place and the physical separation of Dragon from Harmony, with undocking scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're just joining us, you're looking live inside the SpaceX Dragon Freedom. The Crew 9 crew all on board. On the far left, Butch Wilmore. On the far right, Sonny Williams, who launched back on June 5th aboard a Boeing Starliner spacecraft, returning on Tuesday aboard the Dragon Freedom to complete what will be 286 days in space, 285 of which will have been spent on the International Space Station. Just to put their long-duration mission into context, it is not the longest mission in the history of U.S. spaceflight, the longest single mission. That distinction belongs to NASA's Frank Rubio, who had his mission extended due to a coolant leak on the Soyuz spacecraft that he was launched on from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. A replacement Soyuz was launched by Roscosmos. Rubio came home subsequent to that with a total of 371 days in space. Behind him, Mark Vande Hei, NASA astronaut, logged 355 days in space. Scott Kelly, 340. Christina Cook, 328. And Peggy Whitson, 289.
वाओ,
बेवो की शादी के लिए।
ओह गॉड, अपने घर से करेंगे।
मैडम, बस इतनी आसानी से बेटी के डेस्टिनेशन वेडिंग के सपने को स्किप कर दिया। सपनों को स्किप नहीं, सिप करो।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से जुड़े सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
On the far left of your screen, a good view of Dragon with its open nose cap. That nose cone will be closed following Tuesday's deorbit burn as part of the pre-entry procedures. Once again, moving into a quick handover here between satellites on our tracking and data relay satellite system. The Dragon crew all on board. The hatch is closed between Dragon and the International Space Station. The station hatch will be closed a short time from now, and leak checks at the docking interface between the two spacecraft will begin to make sure we have an airtight seal before the small passageway or vestibule known as pressurized mating adapter number 2 will be ready for depressurization down to vacuum and the subsequent undocking of Dragon from Harmony's space-facing port about an hour and 47 minutes from now. Once again inside Dragon, Butch Wilmore on the left, settling into his seat as the commander of Dragon, veteran NASA astronaut Nick Hague. On the far right of your screen, Sonny Williams. Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov is completing a few adjustments to items with his seat. He will don his entry suit just a few moments from now, and all 4 crew members will be positioned, ready for undocking and the beginning of a 17-hour trip back to Earth and a conclusion to this mission. As mentioned earlier, this is not the first time that Wilmore and Williams have been aboard the Dragon Freedom.
SpaceX Freedom, I'm checking from C2.
C2 SpaceX, we have you loud and clear. Help me.
Get you the same. I'm suited and seated, working on Alex, and we'll be finishing up and ready for CP checks here shortly.
SpaceX copies all.
That communication between the spacecraft communicator at SpaceX Mission Control in Hawthorne, California, and Dragon's commander Nick Hague. The communications checks continuing. Alexander Gorbanov yet to suit up. He will momentarily. As mentioned earlier, Williams and Wilmore, not strangers to the Dragon Freedom. They have practiced suit-up procedures over the course of the past few months and took a ride aboard Freedom for a few minutes back on November 3rd when the spacecraft undocked from the forward port of the Harmony module and relocated to the zenith or space-facing port of the Harmony module. A slightly longer trip for Williams and Wilmore today, a 17-hour journey that will take them to a splashdown off the coast of Florida on Tuesday afternoon at 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time.
This Wi-Fi. Time to act. Bad connection ruining your game night. Switch to a smarter Wi-Fi. That is huge. Full home coverage made easy with Act Smart Wi-Fi.
Just to recap, the 4 crew members who are coming home tomorrow aboard the SpaceX Dragon Freedom are all inside Freedom. 3 of the crew members suited up and strapped into their seats. Alexander Gorbanov is completing some preparations before he dons his entry suit. The hatch between Freedom and the International Space Station was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. We are awaiting the closing of the hatch between the International Space Station on that side of the docking interface to permit leak checks to begin and ensure that we have an airtight seal before the vestibule or passageway is depressurized prior to undocking. The Dragon crew members will also undergo leak checks to their suits and further communications checks prior to the undocking itself, which is scheduled about an hour and 41 minutes from now at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern. So as we stand by for confirmation that the station hatch is closed on that side of the docking interface, that activity to be supervised by Ann McClain, the NASA astronaut and commander of the Dragon Endurance that just arrived at the International Space Station, kicking off a handover period of just over a day between the 2 crews, an abbreviated handover compared to others that have preceded it, that designed to provide this opportunity for undocking, thus maximizing the best weather conditions that were forecast for this coming week, for over the next few days. This is our best shot with pristine weather off the coast of Florida to bring the Crew 9 crew home.
on station on 2 for IDA egress.
Go ahead on 2.
We are in step 5.2 and we found some pieces of dust around the hatch seal area, so we are going to clean them with cotton tape.
Come here, sexy little thing. Snap a picture, bring it on. Know you wish you were my Levi jeans. Love you down to the bone.
जब मैक्स प्रोटीन बार है तो हेल्थ से चीटिंग क्यों करते हो ब्रदर?
High protein, tasty and filling, natural ingredients.
प्रोटीन स्नैकिंग मतलब नो चीटिंग.
Copy and concur with the plan.
Japan Aerospace Exploration. Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Takuya Onishi newly arrived on the station as part of Crew 10, noticing a few flecks of dust along the hatch seals, so he will clean those off. We want to make sure that there's no foreign object debris at that hatch seal that could compromise the integrity of an airtight seal between pressurized mating adapter number 2 and the interface with the Dragon Freedom. You're looking right across Nick Hague, the commander of the Dragon Freedom, the mission director at SpaceX's Mission Control Room in Hawthorne, reporting back to NASA Flight Director Marcos Flores here in Mission Control in Houston. We're just about ready for suit leak checks.
Waiting for call for 5.3.
Talk, you are go for step 5.3.
Okay, copy. We are go for closing Apex hatch, and I have one question for you.
Go ahead.
Another view of the crew aboard Dragon Freedom looking...
There is one SpaceX bag. It's labeled as unarmed PFD. The bag number is 153. In its carabiner attached to one of the bungees in PMS3. Can we just leave it as it is?
Checking.
Once again, you're looking at a view across the 4 crew members, Butch Wilmore in the foreground, Alexander Gorbanov to his left, then Nick Hague, and just obscured on the far right-hand side of this configuration is Sonny Williams.
SpaceX Freedom on the Big Loop, Section 5 complete. We've got everybody suited with successful intercom checks.
SpaceX copies on successful intercom checks. Continue to Section 6.
Freedom, welcome.
And in preparation of the leak checks of the 4 suits by the Crew 9 crew members, Butch Wilmore and the others putting their hands in their gloves. Those will be securely zipped in place before the leak checks will begin.
Station Houston on the big loop for the bag.
Go ahead, on 2.
We would like you to remove that bag from PMA 3 temp stow in node 2, and we will find a permanent home for it after the undock.
Okay, we'll temp stow it in node 2.
Freedom on the big loop. Section 6 is complete.
SpaceX copies completion of 4.010.
The hatch between the International Space Station and pressurized mating adapter number 2 is now closed. The Dragon hatch was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Just about 2 minutes ago at 10:26 Central, 11:26 p.m. Eastern, the station hatch also closed, and that sets the stage for the vestibule depressurization and final leak checks at the docking interface.
Finding the right linen shirt with matching chinos, a leather strap watch, takes so much effort. But Amazon Pay is totally effortless.
इस त्योहार Amazon पर मिले wear it with suggestions on top fashion brands ताकि fashion हो effortless.
Amazon, हर पल fashionable.
Dengue cases on rise?
His cough is getting worse by this chemical vaporizer.
No, wait. See, dengue, we can't take that risk.
Trust me.
Shoo.
Herbal Strategy Mosquito Room Spray. 100% herbal. Proven effective against mosquitoes causing dengue, Zika, and chikungunya. Smarter way to shoo mosquitoes away. Herbal Strategy.
Another perspective of Nick Hague and Alexander Gorbanov. Butch Wilmore is to Gorbanov's right. Essentially, you're looking over the shoulder of Sonny Williams, who's in the far left seat, if you will, in the seating configuration on the Dragon Freedom.
Freedom SpaceX on the big loop. You have a go for procedure 4.011. We'll meet you in section 2 when ready.
Freedom copies go for 4.011 sealing check, and we'll press through section 1. We'll check in with you in section 2.
Crew closing their visors in advance of the individual leak checks on their suits.
Station Houston on the big loop for Ann prior to hatch close. And taking a look at stowage and PMA3 currently, we are seeing the APAS hatch cover, and we need that to go into the 0.5 CTB for DMAC.
Okay, we will put the hatch cover into the half CTB.
Thank you.
That conversation between Capcom Tess Caswell here in Mission Control and Ann McLean in your field of view, the Dragon Endurance Commander.
And 2, we're ready to pressurize.
As she checks the integrity of the hatch interface on the station side, the station hatch is closed. That's the androgynous docking adapter hatch. One more hatch has to be closed. That's the one between Harmony and the vestibule to International Docking Adapter 2. Meanwhile, leak checks now are beginning on the 4 suits of the Dragon Crew 9 passengers aboard the Dragon Freedom. The suit leak checks are underway. This should only take a minute or two.
The Houston Station on 2, checking for 7.4.
TOC, you are go to deploy desiccant in 7.4.
Copy, go for 7.4.
Freedom, we've got 4 good suits.
Damn good shoes, yaar. Shoes? Yeah. When you move your way, the world moves with you. Campus, move.
नेचुरल लुकिंग कलर का भरोसेमंद सीक्रेट, इंडिया का सबसे भरोसेमंद है कलर गार्नियर।
Freedom, we see the same for healthy suits.
And that call by Dragon Commander Nick Hague confirming that all 4 suits of the departing Freedom crew members have checked out, good leak checks on the suits, good integrity on those suits. So we now have set the stage for the undocking of the Dragon Freedom and the Crew 9 crew members just about 1 hour and 24 minutes from now. Just to recap, Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore accompanying Commander Nick Hague and Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Gorbanov for the ride downhill and a splashdown off the coast of Florida on Tuesday afternoon. We will be resuming our coverage, joined not just here at the Johnson Space Center but by our colleagues in Hawthorne, California at the SpaceX Control Center. We will be back on the air just over an hour from now at 11:45 p.m. Central Time, 12:45 a.m. Eastern Time for the undocking of the Dragon Freedom and the Crew 9 crew from the International Space Station. The weather conditions off the coast of Florida and the splashdown sites continues to be good, with splashdown of Williams, Wilmore, Gorbanov, and Hague scheduled for Tuesday afternoon at 4:57 p.m. Central Time, 5:57 p.m. Eastern Time. So with the Crew 9 crew strapped into their seats and good leak checks for their suits on the Dragon Freedom, we'll sign off for now, and we'll be back with you just over an hour from now for our undocking coverage. For now, we'll sign off. This is Mission Control Houston. At the moment, on the zenith or space-facing side of the Harmony, the Freedom Commander, to Hague's right will be Alexander Gorbanov, and you see Butch Wilmore on the far left. The undocking between Freedom and the International Space Station will take Freedom above and behind the orbital laboratory through a series of what are known as departure burns. Freedom then will swing below the space station on a trajectory for the deorbit burn, a 7-minute, 29-second braking maneuver that is scheduled at 4:11 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday afternoon, 5:11 p.m. Eastern Time. That will slow Dragon down by more than 50 meters per second, allowing it to drop out of orbit for its high-speed entry back into the Earth's atmosphere and a parachute-assisted splashdown off the coast of Florida. Once again, the 4 Dragon Freedom crew members you see in this view. Butch Wilmore on the far left, Alexander Gorbanov with his back to the camera, Nick Hague just out of the field of view, and Sonny Williams on the far right of your screen. The hatch was closed at 10:05 p.m. Central Time, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time. The station hatch will be closed just a short time from now, enabling a series of leak checks to occur to make sure we have an airtight seal before the pressurization of pressurized mating adapter number 2 can begin. The vestibule will be depressed to vacuum, setting the stage for the initiation of the opening of the hooks holding Dragon in place and the physical separation of Dragon from Harmony, with undocking scheduled at 12:05 a.m. Central Time, 1:05 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're just joining us, you're looking live inside the SpaceX Dragon Freedom. The Crew 9 crew all on board. On the far left, Butch Wilmore. On the far right, Sonny Williams, who launched back on June 5th aboard a Boeing Starliner spacecraft, returning on Tuesday aboard the Dragon Freedom to complete what will be 286 days in space, 285 of which will have been spent on the International Space Station. Just to put their long-duration mission into context, it is not the longest mission in the history of U.S. spaceflight, the longest single mission. That distinction belongs to NASA's Frank Rubio, who had his mission extended due to a coolant leak on the Soyuz spacecraft that he was launched on from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. A replacement Soyuz was launched by Roscosmos. Rubio came home subsequent to that with a total of 371 days in space. Behind him, Mark Vande.
Finding the perfect dress, strappy heels, and jewelry takes so much effort. For Amazon Pay, it's totally effortless.
इस त्योहार Amazon पर मिले wear it with suggestions on top fashion brands ताकि fashion हो effortless.
हर पल
Protein snacking मतलब no chicken.
NASA astronaut logged 355 days in space. Scott Kelly, 340. Christina Cook, 328. And Peggy Whitson, 289.